So our first topic today is two-step and two-factor authentication. And we're going to cover what is it and whether or not you should use this type of authentication. First, we're going to talk about the differences between the two types of authentication. First, we have two-factor authentication. And what that is when you're using a PIN or a password in addition to a code that is generated by either an app, usually an app on your phone, or sometimes there's a special USB device. If you ever worked for certain employers, they'll have you plug those in and that'll generate a code. Either of those two methods would be considered two-factor authentication, meaning that you have to have both of those things to verify you before you're able to go any further with your account. The other type of authentication is two-step authentication. And this involves you using a PIN or a password plus a code that is usually sent to either a phone number or an email address that you've put on file for that account. So usually when you go to reset a password or something like that, that's when it's going to give you that verification option, which we'll talk more about here in a minute. But it'll usually give you the option to text, call, or email that code to you. Now let's talk about whether or not you should use these types of authentication. Both of them add an additional layer of security. And they allow you to use the same password or the PIN on multiple accounts without leaving your account as vulnerable. So let's say, just for the sake of example, that you're using the password 123 on your account. And obviously that's a really easy password to guess, and it was on like the top most hacked account password list, so please don't use that. But if you did happen to use that password and one of those two methods we talked about, it wouldn't matter if you gave everybody in the world your password, because if they don't have the ability to provide that generated code or that verification method through your phone or your email, they're not going to be able to get into your account, whether you have the easiest password in the world or the most challenging. So it can be an extra layer of security that you can use on your account. And in conjunction with that, you also want to make sure that you're using your that your account information is up to date. Because if you don't have that authentication method set up properly, you're not going to be able to get into your account either. And we're going to discuss that a little bit more here in a moment. Yeah. All right, no questions so far. So we'll move on to the next part here, which is password resets. And this one is probably going to be useful to everybody in the group. Everybody can use this. We all run into a situation where we're told our password needs to be updated, or for some reason it's not letting us in, or perhaps the account has been breached, or you just want to change that password. So how can you do that? Well, if you already have the password, then you can just go into your account and usually re-enter your password and choose a new one. But if you're having trouble getting into your account, then you may have to go through some additional steps. So when you attempt to log into your account, what you want to do is go to the website that you're trying to get into your account to. So for example, if you are trying to get into your Gmail account for your email, and you use a program like Outlook or Thunderbird, you're not going to be able to reset your password from there. You're actually going to have to open your web browser. Doesn't matter if you're using Chrome, Firefox, Internet Explorer, even Edge, whatever you're using, and you want to go directly to that website. So if you're trying to reset a Google password or a Gmail password, you would go to gmail.com, and when you try to log into that page, you're going to get the option for forgot password. So if you are signed out of your account and you try to log into your account, as you can see here, you have the option to choose forgot password. And then it'll give you some various options on how you can get back into your account. You're going to want to, as I stated here, follow the directions that are on the screen. They're going to vary from company to company. So as much as we hate to read those little nitty-gritty details, it really is important that we read those and see exactly what they're requiring. The process seems a lot more complicated than it actually is, okay? So you have to think about it like this. Anybody in the world could be trying to log into your email account, and all they have is your email address. And when they hit forgot password, you don't want them to have access to that. You want them to have to verify that it's you before they can actually get into that account. So what you're going to want to do is usually it'll give you some options on where you can send a verification code to, which is usually going to be an email address or a phone number that you previously provided. I get this question a lot. Can I use a different number? Absolutely not. You have to think about it from a scammer's perspective. If a scammer can go in and put their phone number in there, then the whole point of verifying that it's you is moot. The whole point is moot. So you have to make sure that that information that you have on your account is accurate so that if you do get locked out, you have a way to get back in. You will not be able to choose a different phone number or email address once you get to that point. And what information is required? As I mentioned, you'll need to be able to access the phone number or email address that you previously added to your account or answer a security question. Now, in Google's case here, they did ask me what was the last password that I remember using. Most will not ask that question. Most of them will give you an option to answer a security question, but a lot of times those are being phased out. So you're really not going to get the security question very often anymore because it's not really that secure. Then the last thing is without this information, you're going to have limited ability to prove that it's your account. So when you get to that point where you've tried your verification options, the phone number, the email is not valid, or like I ran into a scenario yesterday with an AOL account. The customer of mine had no recollection of any of the phone numbers on the account. It was as if somebody else had gotten into his account, added those phone numbers, which then prevented him from getting back in. So right now we're at the mercy of trying to prove that that account belongs to that person. And in the case of a lot of different account providers, especially email, they tend to ask you questions like, who were people that you recently emailed? What were some of the subjects of the emails that you recently sent? Things that only the account holder themselves would know. But not all accounts have those abilities. And in the case of the scenario I was in yesterday, this client had AOL, but he was not a paid customer. And they basically wanted him to upgrade his account in order for us to get back into it. The thing I found most funny, though, was that they weren't going to allow us to upgrade his account until we verified it. So we were kind of stuck there, and that one we're waiting to resolve yet. But those are the kinds of issues you can run into if that information is not up to date. And we have had people who've had to just do away with an old account. There's no way to go in and get those email addresses. There's no way to go in and get those emails or whatever other information unless you've already had those things stored on your computer. So we had a great question. Do you want the browser to remember the password? And that's actually what we're getting to now, which is saving your passwords. Is it safe, and what extra security you can take to keep that information safe? So I'm under the impression, or my opinion, is that having your password stored anywhere online is a security risk. Because if anybody gets access to that information, they then have all of your other passwords. And that is true in say Google Chrome, if you store your passwords and you have your account synced. That is true in Firefox. That is true if you're using Safari. If you're choosing to save your passwords on your device, not only is that syncing it to your account, depending on your settings, it's also storing those passwords on your computer, which is fine for you, but you don't want to let anybody else have access to those things. So if you were in Monday's session, we talked a little bit about remote support scams, and that is one situation where you don't want them to be able to see your passwords, but you kind of have to give them access to those things. So like on Google, if you save a password and then you need to go and retrieve those passwords, like see the whole list of your passwords, it's going to ask you to verify your account. And in my case, it'll have me do my thumbprint on my phone. So it is, again, a personal preference on whether or not you want to save those passwords either in your browser or a third-party program. I always like to save my passwords because honestly I have thousands of passwords for so many different things that if I didn't, I would lose my mind. But there are some things that you can do, some safe practices to help avoid running into problems, and we're going to get to that in a second. But in general, you want to avoid saving your bank or financial passwords and minimize the risk by not using those passwords for any other accounts. So if you have a bank password, make it extra strong. Put a couple extra characters in there, save it in your phone or write it down somewhere, but don't use exactly what you normally use, and don't use password 123, please, because you don't want to let everybody into your bank account. And keep in mind that your password is just like a PIN number. You know, if you gave somebody your ATM card, or in this case, as an example, your email address, you don't want to give them that PIN number or that password. Like, okay, here's my information, but I'm not going to let you in to get all my money or get all my emails. So you do want to be careful about who you're providing that information to and take extra steps to protect. So what additional security can you take to protect your passwords? You do want to always make sure your account information is up to date. That way you can be notified if any attempts have been made to access your account. So I gave the example yesterday, and I'm going to give this example again because it's just really a perfect example. I was in a situation where I actually had my Gmail password stolen because I was in my email. I had clicked on an email that was from my son's baseball coach, and at the bottom of the email it said, continue reading. And that's something that Gmail typically does legitimately when the email's written very long. So I clicked on the link and it asked me to sign in. And I was in a hurry. I wasn't thinking about it. I typed my password in and immediately I said, wait a minute. Why did I just have to type my password in? That's not normal. So I went and I changed my Gmail password. And not an hour later, I got a notification from Gmail in my email telling me that someone tried to access my account in North Carolina. Obviously, it wasn't me. I don't know about you, but I can't get to North Carolina in an hour from here. Just don't have that much of a lead foot. And I didn't grow any wings overnight. But in any case, I had taken the proper steps because as soon as I realized that I had typed my password in and it wasn't supposed to go there, I changed it. So Google was notifying me that that had occurred, but I had already taken the steps necessary to protect my account. And most accounts will do the same. So it's really important that you keep your phone number and or your email address up to date so that when you're getting those notices, you can go change your password. And if you have multiple accounts that use that same password, change those also, because they're linked together. If your email is tied to this password and this account's compromised, whoever compromised that account could also try that information on Amazon or Yahoo or any other accounts along the web, Facebook. So you want to make sure that those passwords get updated too. Keeping that information up to date and tied to your account can help keep you from having issues if your account does get compromised.